Part 2, Conformity, Deviance, and Control.
Section A, Norms and Conformity.
If culture is a collection of things such as behaviors, beliefs, etc., then norms are standards in a particular culture that define the obligatory and expected behaviors of people in various situations.
Norms are determined through interaction and are shaped by the power of those involved. That is, sometimes those with the power decide on the norms. Norms can inhibit certain types of thinking and actions. Which thoughts and actions are inhibited are those which go against or are not represented by the dominant group. These include thoughts and actions that might result in challenges to the dominant ways of thinking or in a society. There are 4 main categories of norms: folkways, mores, laws, and values.
Folkways are customs. Mores are ethical standards.
We've got several issues to cover: structuring conformity, social functions of deviance, social control, and theories of deviance.
Structuring conformity.
Conformity refers to the actions that are consistent with the values of a society or particular culture. These values may be more or less shared by various members of a society.
So conformity is the adherence to norms and values. When you conform, you do what many other people do and what is expected of you. But here's the key point. The structure of these norms and values often is presumed to be beneficial to all members of a society. However, this is not necessarily the case. Remember that norms may be determined by a dominant group of society or some group with power, but the norms of this group aren't necessarily beneficial to everyone. Some norms and values can create an oppressive culture within which certain members of a society must live.
For example, millions of Jews in World War II Nazi Germany were persecuted and executed because the norms and values of Germany at the time deemed this treatment as appropriate. Many people conformed to the norm too. This may be because the Nazis were the dominant group. They had the power to determine the norms and create standards of behavior. In this case, most people who went against the norms of the Nazis lost their freedom or even their lives.
Now, how does society decide what is correct? Recall that society includes patterned ways of acting called norms.
We said that norms are made up of folkways, mores, and laws, and are related to values. And further, these norms come from interactions, including those of people in positions of power. Interactions involving either agreements or power or both determine what stuff is right or wrong and what is generally accepted in a society.
Note that we say generally. Not all norms are accepted or acted upon or even paid attention to. We already mentioned the concept of deviance, which is the departure from norms. But you really should examine other situations in which norms may be more or less ignored or unenforceable.
There are 2 categories norms can be placed in. Norms can be either moral norms or institutional norms.
You remember the folkways, mores, laws, values. Moral norms generally include behaviors defined as those that absolutely must or must not occur.
The moral norm is not necessarily written as law. It may be a value, more, or folkway. It is not usually enforced by a legal system. Moral norms are enforced by social pressures.
One moral norm: treat people with respect. If we don't treat somebody with respect, people may look down upon us. People don't like to be considered mean-spirited, so many of us try to be nice. However, if you do end up being a total jerk to someone, you don't automatically get thrown in jail, unfortunately. So, since there aren't institutionalized forms of punishment for being mean, treating people with respect is an optional norm or a moral norm.
Moral norms are enforced by informal sanctions. These sanctions include stuff like shame and ostracism.
Many people don't want to be seen as deviant, so they conform to moral norms.
Institutional norms, on the other hand, are norms which are written rules, often known as laws. Laws are the norms that have been enacted and are enforced by some state or government. Laws are written, legal, and formal. If you break a law or an institutional norm, some state or government penalty will be imposed.
For example, in most states, if you're caught driving drunk, whether you're a resident of that state or not, there will be legal actions taken against you. These actions are usually punishments, like tickets, massive fines, suspension of license, or even jail time. Unless, of course, you're famous, in which case you get to be on a talk show. So when you violate institutional norms and you were caught, chances are you'll have formal, legal actions taken against you. These are some pretty strict norms you don't want to be messing with, or ouch.
Now, some norms can be both moral and institutional. For example, taking a human life is looked upon in most cultures as morally unacceptable, but it's also against the law in most societies, so it goes against institutional norms as well. However, under certain circumstances such as war, self-defense, or capital punishment, the killing of a human being may occur that doesn't violate the moral or institutional norm. This suggests that norms can be broken under certain circumstances, so just remember that there are exceptions to norms.
One other thing we might mention before moving on. Moral and institutional norms may be considered contradictory to some folks. What do we mean by this? Okay, it's like so. There are some acts in society that are considered good by some people and yet considered evil by others.
Take the issue of abortion. Abortion is legal in the United States, yet many people oppose it on moral grounds.
So in some places, something may be an institutional norm, but not necessarily a moral norm.
So actually, norms help structure conformity by creating either moral or institutional reactions if one does not conform. If you break a moral norm, shame results. If you break an institutional norm, legal actions may be taken against you. In many instances, it seems as though it would be a lot less uncomfortable to follow and to conform to norms than to go off and break them.